Well, I'm pretty sure I said I'd try to have an episode out last week, but I'm also pretty sure I warned last week was likely going to be a special flavor of brain-immolating attrition for me, and I was unfortunately correct. Though I was a bit off on the particulars, but that's not important to y'all. No, let's talk about what is important. For those working in the desiccated husk of modern mainstream journalism, those at niche indie publications like Assigned Media, the Trans News Network, Aftermath, Second Wind, The Mothership, the freelancers like Parker Malloy, Marissa Gabasa, and even the weirdos on the periphery like me, straddling the blurry line between video essayist, freelance reporter, comedian, and talk show host, I guess? The first year of Trump 2.0 has been a time. On one side, you have the administration itself, pushing hatred and bigotry, murdering Americans and US citizens in the streets while sending thousands of others to concentration camps where they will be tortured until they cede their rights and are shipped off to a country they have no ties to, which has likely been selected because the government there will continue the torture, if not outright execute them. And that was before launching into another nodding forever war in the Middle East over oil that we can't have. Murdering civilians and children in particular in the process. You have state governments, their police collaborating with feds, often breaking city and state sanctuary laws while facing no consequences. Judges openly auditioning for appointments based on their loyalty, not to the law, as nebulous a concept as that is, or the Constitution, but to Trump himself. On the other side, you have supposed liberals and allies, universities like Brown sacrificing their trans and immigrant students, hospitals like UC Health here in Denver openly violating anti-discrimination laws to deny trans people life-saving healthcare humanity has been studying, developing, and using for more than 97 years. Yes, that is when the first HRT pills were developed, while providing identical care to cis folks even now. That's not an allegation, BT dubs. A judge literally said UC Health was breaking the law before letting them off scot-free. You have Gavin Trump 3.0 Newsom demanding Dems return to being culturally normal. You know, like back when Bill Clinton, an Epstein associate, coercively raped an intern. All while the wannabe fascist himself preens over his homophobic knee pad joke for months. And you have folks like Aaron in the Morning and The Needle claiming to be voices for oppressed minorities, but just so happening to turn up a new scary story only barely actually connected to reality, at least as they frame it, that only they are willing to cover every couple of months when one might suspect that the money starts to run dry. And don't even get me started on the New York Times or the Washington Post. It's a strange environment to report on. Tell me, it's a strange environment to create in. The type of people pulled towards journalism aren't often the sort to bury their heads in the sand, at least when it comes to their particular niche. At least that's also what I used to think. I still do in many cases, but not universally anymore. In the last 2 weeks, the gaming industry, as well as its littermate VTubing and streaming industries, were rocked by yet more sweeping layoffs, accusations, then tacit admittance of fraud by internet roach king Asmongold's agency. Right, Asmongold. Yes, I literally cannot remember his name. Everything I've learned about this man has been against my will. Former agency, Mythic Talent. The increasingly fervent pushes for age verification laws throughout legislative bodies across the country and planet. Yet more anti-queer, anti-furry, anti-porn censorship on the part of Visa and MasterCard as well. And yet, Aftermath, a team of ex-Kotaku journalists formerly so woke, they inspired the Gamergate movement to dub their primary subreddit r/Kotaku in action, decided it was the perfect week to report on A small fence at the notoriously price-gouged, AI slop-filled, and ice-watched GDC? Review a flavor of Red Bull, and publish an article framing male-identifying readers of Yuri as cool, subversive, and queer in the same way women who use yaoi and gay male romances to experience stories free of systemic misogyny are. I won't speculate why they're not reporting on any of these more real issues that they definitely would have while at Kotaku, but I will speculate as to why these particular stories were the ones that they did put to print. Personally, I suspect it's because the authors wanted to write them. Not that there's anything malicious in that. That's just the catch-22 that lies at the heart of all creative work. The need to balance what you want to create and what your audience actually wants or maybe needs to see or engage with. And let's just say I think this was from leaning a bit too hard on the former, and I'm not necessarily going to blame anyone for that, but the joke here being, hey, I've just given you a Coles Notes on most of the vile news of the week that I don't think you heard about, while also mocking journalistic malpractice from The Needle and Aaron Reed, and the journalistic indifference of Aftermath, all to effectively turn my own cold open into a news my audience should probably know, so I can use the rest of my show to talk about the news I actually want to cover, rather than completing the slow transfiguration into a canon of oracular feculence, which reporting nothing but the worst of the news lately has inflicted upon me. Yeah, I was feeling poetic when I wrote that line, and it did feel like a nice bow on the balance comment from before, Aftermath leaning too far into what they want to cover, me leaning too far into what I felt I should cover. With that said, and welcome to Muttday Morning News. I'm the titular Mutt Fen. Now let's get to some news. Actually, before I get into the complete news, I'm not going to be covering the Subscribestar BS, aka part of the sensorial push I mentioned in the opener. As much as I'd love to be making jokes about human-like knee orientation being the new female-presenting nipples, or how citing Anna Valens as the original reporter will give all my hate watchers the kind of priapism normally only associated with the Brazilian wandering spider bites. But, one, the story is still developing and this is a weekly show. Two, this is YouTube and I'm not in the mood to do the careful dance of what words I can and cannot say this week. So I'll just say this. Well, Subscribestar, like Patreon, Itch, Steam, and OnlyFans before it, implemented the terrible new terms. It was at the behest of payment processors and card networks like, and often specifically cited, Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, and Stripe, who've been doing this same crap quite literally for decades now, claiming it harms their reputation to process payments for whatever the hell they fucking decide harms their reputation. That's the whole deal with this. You can go to stoppaypros.neocities.org or yellat.money, both of them in the description down below, to learn how to fight back against Visa and MasterCard, as well as legislators telling you what you're allowed to do with your money. And you can also go to congress.gov/findyourmember, all links again in the description, to find your representatives and demand they protect your rights to privacy and free commerce by pushing back against age verification legislation and the whole slew of bills the GOP and many Dems are trying to push, including KOSA, the Kids Act, the Screen Act, Sammy's Law, the App Store Accountability Act, and all of the calls to overturn, retool, or gut Section 230, which, just let's make this abundantly clear. Section 230, despite the fact that it, yes, obviously sounds threatening and scary because it's just a section number, that's the thing that makes it so that all websites can host any kind of user-generated content without risking being sued for the things we and all other internet users say. It's the thing that makes each of us individually responsible for those sort of things. It's why comment sections exist. You literally cannot have a comment section without Section 230, or the company that runs that comment section having to now worry about being legally responsible for anything and everything said or posted there. It's so many reasons why it sounds bad, but it's also really, really important because it's what enables the current internet, the international internet, to exist. Repealing Section 230 or even retooling it will likely break the global internet in ways we honestly cannot parse. Okay, now to the news! Hey, did you know there's a Jurassic Park TCG? I mean, I hope you didn't know about it because, well, one, I run a news show. The entire point is I'm trying to tell you things you probably haven't heard before, but also I'm incredibly into niche, absurd corner case TCGs, even if I just want to know about them, not necessarily play them. And I only learned about this last week, at least partially because it has only had a starter deck printing one set, and its second set is now coming out. Also, it's only available in Korea. The game launched back in July of last year, and I should stress, I have no idea if it's even remotely fun. I have no idea how it plays, though it does look kind of similar to at least the resource system for Magic. I can tell you that it has 4-card types, dinosaurs, events, which share a deck together, while characters and areas each get decks to themselves, and it's got a color identity system with cards all falling into red, green, blue, or purple with no crossover. Oh wait, there's also markers, which I guess are probably colorless. They seem to be, from what I've been able to parse. But that's all I know. I can make some assumptions. Card game nutter that I am, I have played a lot of them, and I get the base design pretty intuitively. But that's not really my bag, you know, spreading potential misinformation that I can't verify. No, I'm just here to show you these cards. Because these are how I learned about the game. Like, literally, I saw that and went, I remember that toy. I gave that as a birthday present to a kid named Dylan, who I've known since I was fucking 3. And there it was, gorgeously done up on a TCG card for a game I'd never heard of. And wait, hang on, is that credited to a paleo-themed VTuber I was tangentially already aware of? Wait a second, and she's trans, and she did more art for this apparently upcoming set, all of which is based on the toy lines? So I went investigating, and do you know what I found? I mean, again, I hope not. Short version, the game is being made by YoungCha, a Korean, I guess I'd call them a marketing company? Oh, they're like if Acclaim had a sense of humor and an accountant. But, like, back in 2024, they ran this Minions Pancake House pop-up for 2 weeks to advertise Despicable Me 4. I never said it was a good sense of humor, just a sense of humor. But it does sort of explain why they're getting trans paleo-themed VTuber Paleoraptor to do the art for this game. They know their market, including us dinosaur autistic flavor trans girls. It also explains why all the art is like this, directly tying back to specific shots from the movies, toys, comics, and video games from Jurassic Park's 33. Fuck, I just remembered I'm only a few months older than this franchise. Bad enough that I'm only a few days younger than Magic the Gathering. What was I saying? Oh, right, Jurassic Park's 33-year history. And that's because they've hired, and I mean no hyperbole with this, the world's biggest Jurassic Park superfan as their brand consultant. Lewis Lee, aka Dr. Trex, aka Dr. John Hammond, has been running his InGen Naver blog for more than 15 years. I have been a mildly obsessive dinosaur girly pup since as long as I can remember. I literally used to describe my poor circulation as I have difficulty thermoregulating because I don't have Stegosaurus backplates when I was like 4. And I learned like 8 new things about Jurassic Park's lore and background production just from this one blog post on what specific instances inspired the art for each dinosaur in the freaking starter decks. Seriously, Links to his blog on the TCG posts are all down in the description. They are in Korean, but that is one of the few languages machine translation consistently handles well enough, unless you're using an AI-based translator, in which case they're all going to be wrong. But this is also news because, announced back in February and reaffirmed on March 13th, the game is coming to North America. And per Lewis Lee, it was set to be exhibited at TCG Expo in Kentucky in March. But since he writes English as a second language, and there is no such event as far as I can determine, I'm going to speculate he might have meant the Gamma Expo in Louisville, Kentucky 2 weeks ago. Sadly, that's an industry trade show, so there wasn't exactly a major journalistic presence, especially given the death of journalism in general, but especially niche publications like board gaming. Basically just got Rascal left, I think. So hopefully the public will get to see more soon? You know, I wonder if I can fit a dinosaur story into every episode of Muttday going forward if I try hard enough. Or if I should. I probably could. I don't know if I should. So, I might have left out an extra secret bonus reason for tearing into Aftermath like that in the opening. I am going to be talking about the Mythic Talent fraud allegations. And yes, surprising absolutely no one with pattern recognition, Anna Valens was the first reporter on this as well. Sorry, I'm not one to troll r/YouTube drama. Suffice it to say, the story is still developing, as with so many things. But if you're familiar with the V Shoujo fraud story back in 2025, don't worry yet. It's nowhere near that bad. At least not yet. Where V Shoujo is using massive influxes of cash, like the $600,000 in charity donations Ironos raised, to pay their own overdue bills under the assumption they'd eventually get ahead of the red in their ledger, rather literally robbing Paul to pay Peter. The Mythic Talent fraud reads more like classic middleman money skimming. The VTuber Grimmy alleged on stream, which was then transposed to r/YouTube drama by u/Mahuza, that on at least 2 occasions, sponsors agreed to pay her $2,100 and $4,400 respectively for a 2-hour and a 4-hour sponsored stream. But Mythic only paid her $2,000 and $4,000 despite their fees and cuts, at least in theory, already being taken from the original amounts. Initially, Mythic told Grimmy both were typos that she had received from the publishers and that the $2,000 and $4,000 were correct, but she confirmed with the publishers they'd indeed paid the previously agreed higher rate to Mythic under the assumption that $2,100 and $4,400 were going to her. Naturally, Mythic responded on Twitter, because we live in hell, ignoring their own previous lines, or can I call them lies now without being sued for libel or slander, since I will technically probably put this in the description as well, about the typos, since they're now claiming it was always Mythic taking their fees and cuts out, explaining perfectly why their cut was 4.76% from the first one and 9.09% from the latter. And again, doesn't that mean you lied about the typos the first time then? But sure, yes, this new line is 1,200% true, just like the last one simultaneously. Sure. Oh, and about Asmongold being booted from Mythic Talent, just to be clear, as far as I've been able to tell, that was as one of the talent. I've not been able to verify whether or not he's still a part owner of the agency he co-founded. Unless I leave you thinking he might have had something to do with the fraud, it seems much more likely that Mythic cut the streamer after he became an emotionally hysterical wreck when people asked him to please stop celebrating the US's double-tap strike on a girls' elementary school in the opening hours of an illegal, unprovoked attack, and the subsequent war we've apparently just stopped pretending it's not a war on Iran. I joke he just has bad timing, but we all know he's basically always screaming for someone's blood, so it was really only a matter of time as he and his maggot ilk become increasingly reviled for doing exactly what they said they were going to do. Good news! Games can still be good, even new ones. Slay the Spire 2 wags, and you probably don't actually need me to tell you that, but look, let me celebrate something, okay? Everything about it feels like an evolution of Slay the Spire rather than just more of the first one. The Ironclad, the Silent, and the Defect return from the first game and are joined by the Regent and the Necrobinder. The returners are probably the most surprising of that, managing to feel similar, but not the same. Again, evolution, it's great. Obviously, everyone has some new cards, but not every card and relic from the first game is here. The Ironclad Strength deck is still sort of around, but it's more of a support plan for other builds without Heavy Blade and Limit Break, while the Exhaust deck, at least to me, feels more fleshed out. I know people liked it before, it just never clicked for me. And the Strike synergies seem to have ramped way up in a way that feels chaotically amusing and speaks to my goblin heart. Oh, and it feels like the Ironclad is able to play around Vulnerable as a more intrinsic mechanic a lot more. That's fun. The Silent, well, she's either utterly busted complimentary or utterly busted derogatory, depending on who you ask. I'm generally in the former camp. The Shiv strat feels a lot more satisfying than in the first game. The Sly keyword is such a simple quality of life improvement, making them much easier to process at a glance, especially during the card reward screen, since they won't have the yellow glow that you have during an actual discard. Though Poison doesn't feel as consistent. Losing Catalyst is just kind of hard to come back from, though the new powers working similar are interesting too. The Defect probably changed the least. The power deck lost some card draw potential with Heatsink gone and the tweak in how focus works. They gave the poor Defect ADHD between games, so most focus buffs now only last one turn. As well as losing electrodynamics and static discharge means the lightning strat runs a little differently, but more than anything, the Defect came out ahead in my opinion. I've been trying to force zero-cost decks because the new power Feral lets Claw scale up so fast, and Trash to Treasure and Compact let me turn the downsides of Boost Away, Gunk Up, and Overclock into, well, benefits and yet more chaos that makes my little goblin heart happy. I'm not sure about Glass Orbs, though. They seem kind of The biggest cuts to the returners were specifically in their AoE cards and their more immediate energy gain effects, a rule which mostly holds true to the two new characters. Look, the Regent is weird and is doing a bunch of manipulation stuff, so it's... We'll get to it. Consequently, Act 1 feels more challenging rather than the cakewalk it was in the first game. Yes, until the Ascension started messing with you, that is. Here, the more careful combat, having to pick targets even in Act 1 all the way through with very little AoE, balances out to a more natural lead-in to Act 2 rather than the lurch in difficulty I found the first game to have. Now, let me not forget about the new characters, who are a fupping joy and a breath of fresh air after the remarkably interesting but often painful to pilot Watcher. The Regent is a delightfully hateable shit that resonates perfectly with his playstyle, because it's built all around resource accrual and deck manipulation. It just vibes right. He feels like a landed asshole gentry. I'm not sure what it is about the Regent, but I also sort of want to describe him as, well, radiating so much fail girl energy, I think he might be an RCBG character who's broken containment. But obviously, we have to talk about the Necrobinder and Austie. I'm a tiny goblin of a trans lesbian. Of course I've read the Locked Tomb and have a strong resonance with one or more of the characters. Flavor aside, I just enjoy the way the Necrobinders play as this interesting balance around using Austie as a bone shield, a self-propagating but temporary expansion to your health bar, and an attack source that is increasingly dissociated from your strength, with more brain-bending mechanics like Doom or her fixations on ethereal cards. As for flavor-wise, okay, full disclosure, I'm technically bi, not a lesbian. I'm just not interested in most men. Yes, this is important because the Necrobinder and Ostia are 100% my polyamorous lovers. What can I say? I'm extremely here for a necromancer lady who could eat my soul by accident and a bony dude who's quiet and good with his fingers. To return, kicking and screaming the whole way, naturally, to a marginally less thirsty topic, that evolution comment I made didn't just apply to the gameplay either. Slay the Spire 1 has these beautifully stylistic visuals where everything looks like papercraft models. Some had simple joints, but most animated by simply stretching the models. It gave everything a distinctly layered feel. Slay the Spire 2, on the other hand, still gives me a papercraft feel, but the style has evolved. Ooh, I know. It's like comparing an 8-bit Mario game to a 16-bit one. The gameplay is not that different, though it has obviously been tweaked and tightened, but the change in visual style lends the experience depth rather than the emulation of depth through those layers. I mean this as a compliment, but I'm saying that first, just in case anyone thinks I mean it otherwise. But I think Slay the Spire 2 is the platonic ideal of Arxis, specifically Adventure Quest's animation style. Oh, and the silly scribbled placeholder art is back too, and it's still my favorite game dev thing of 2026 because it's not fucking slop. Thank you, Megacrit. Thank you. I'm trying to celebrate the good a little bit more this week, so I'm going to bounce up and down and tell you a couple of cool tidbits I didn't think were worth a full story on their own before I get to the outro proper, okay? Okay. First up, the Trans Rights Readathon 2026 is starting, well, when you see this, theoretically tomorrow on March 17th and running until Trans Day of Visibility on March 31st. So, if you'd like to participate, all you have to do is read books by trans authors. You can also use the hashtag to post and see what others are reading too, if you want that social element. And I guess you can also go to transrightsreadathon.card.co to sign up for the Storygraph Challenge if you need the gamification element, or if you want to donate through the campaign to support the charity Point of Pride, but I'd honestly recommend against their suggested books and their master list. I was only able to confirm that 5 of the 37 authors in their 2 posted recommendations were trans women, and 2 of those are dead and sharing a singular credit over a 66-page zine. Not that you shouldn't read Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries by Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson, the opposite, in fact. But it's very telling the organizers included both more cis men and more drag queens than living trans women in their trans rights book recommendations. To be perfectly clear, I am not accusing anyone of malice or even saying any of their book suggestions are bad. Wait, no. I personally find cis people associating drag with trans people incredibly insulting. One is an active choice to be who we are in a world which hates us. The other is a costume you can take off. So fuck that book. Not for existing, mind, but for being a book on drag written by a bunch of cis folk in a trans rights recommendation list. Returning to my previous point, I am accusing no one of malice. The organizers are overwhelmingly cis liberals who still use X and Instagram. They seem to mean well. They're just ill-informed and uninterested in correcting that oversight. But you don't really have to deal with them at all to read a bunch of books by trans folks over the last 2 weeks of March. You can just do that. You can use their hashtag. It's not a they can't. We have better claim to it than they do. Don't worry. How many books are you planning on diving into? Personally, I want to say something ambitious like 1 novel a day, and I could technically do that. I've done more than that before, but it sounds like a bad idea. And I think my real goal is going to be initially rereading Trans Rad Femme, finally getting to Bailey Saxon's Song of the Dryad, and then I think I'm just going to start slamming my way through the Chainiverse books, if the way I tore through Moth of the House of Hua and The Grace of Sorcerers is anything to go on. Oh, and probably something by Fern B. Bedek. I own so much of her stuff as ebooks, but I've never gotten around to any of them for some reason. Oh, wait, hang on, I forgot something. Also, fuck Make Room for Love, and anyone recommending it as a trans book. Yes, I'm back on this. Sorry. Not sorry. Seriously, the first thing you learn about the trans woman in question is that she's already had the surgery, so everyone knows right away they won't have to worry about dealing with any yucky girl dick. In the angry as all hell review I wrote and apparently never published, I described Mira, the main character, as a frictionless ball bearing whose transness, like everything else about her, informs her situation, but not her character. She'd need to have one for that. She doesn't care about anything. She exists so the marketing can say lesbian romance between femme trans girl and a cis butch and not be sued for false advertising because she is technically that. Mira goes through the motions of a romance novel, albeit one where all the friction and issues are neatly sectioned into their own chapters to be addressed only when everyone is ready and comfortable. It's what other people who don't use Tumblr think Tumblr is like. But that's just it. Mira doesn't care about anything. If you ask any real human, actual person, trans woman what being a woman means to her, she'll have an answer. Probably one she's either been refining to a razor point or just kind of stapling bits onto like a massive, ever-increasing Katamari ball. They're balls, right? Orbs? Katamari. Since the day she first took a titty skittle. If you asked Make Room for Love's trans lead what being a woman means to her, I give even odds she'd either shrug or say something about the necessity of labor movements while shredding a cabbage. If you'd like some books actually written by trans people, inexplicably not included on the recommendation lists or the master list document at all, Kara Buchanan has put all 3 of her Magica Riot books, as well as their audiobook versions? Companions? Whatever. Read by Emma Martello, up for sale in an itch bundle for $30. Yes, link in the description. To honor the readathon. Oh, and B, the single cis third of Maria Ying, also offered some recommendations, actually including trans women, and I will second every single one of them, and add a few more myself. If you're looking for egg fix stories where the character's transition is the focus of the narrative, I'd suggest anything written by Viria Durav. If you're looking for sci-fi, Catnip is a slower burn affair set on the abandoned remains of a Venus colony founded on crypto by legally not Elon Musk, which definitely failed in a magnificently foolish way, and we get to observe the aftermath. If you want fantasy, A Dragon or Princess is actually a really quick novella with accidental force femme shenanigans and the cutest trans girl picks her name scene I have ever read. I actually wrote a review of that one on my site last year. Yup, link also in the description. Only 2/3 of the women who make up Maria Ying are trans. I'm still counting her. So, if you're looking for the most beautifully cruel worlds and prose paired with novels full to the brim with intrigue, sex, and ridiculously cathartic violence, check out The Grace of Sorcerers if you're looking for an urban fantasy where magic is not some hidden world a la the Files of both Dresden and Laundry variety, but practiced openly. Or check out the Hades Calculus, plus its wild, expanded universe, many of which are in fact canon and published at the... with the support? Yes, with the support of all the parts of Maria Ying. If you are looking for a cyberpunk dystopia with only a single man, mecha, and the Hellenic pantheon reimagined as an even more dysfunctionally incestuous bag of horny lesbian cats who are, yes, naturally still gods running the city. No, seriously, if you think I am joking, go check out the anthology prequel / some of the short stories take place at the same time as the Hades Calculus. Memories of Olympus, the first short in it, Lightning Spear, is a trans supremacy siscon Tumblr post from the perspective of Zeus about how much she needs to bang Hades, her trans twin sister, expanded out into a well, 28-page short story of utterly beautiful, horny, and pathetic prose. And last but not least, if you'd like more mecha, but Nexus Alpha is more horny and feral than you're in the mood for, and Warhound is a bit too dark, or you've just read both already, well, then I would recommend Sundered Moon by Feyrin. The first chapter is a little bit plotting, but once it's got the setup out of the way, it takes off running into a plot best described as gee which if Slueta already knew she was a polyamorous lesbian when she arrived at Ostacasia, and her actual goal was, from the very beginning, to take down the Space Assembly League with her bare hands if necessary. And finally, one bit of sillier media news. After 12 long years, the adult webcomic Alfie by In Case wrapped its final chapter on March 12th. If you're looking for a long-form comic about generational trauma and racism explored through the earnestly horny and gay fantasy world, now complete with an ending, I highly recommend it. It's not In Case's spiciest work, but with him, we're grading on a curve comparing a Ghost Pepper to a Carolina Reaper, I guess? If you've made it to the end of my show, let's just say I suspect if you know of him, you're likely more familiar with his Eldritch Force Femme adjacent comic, The Invitation, a work so delightfully and unabashedly horny, I think its final image is the only YouTube-safe panel I could even show. And that's only because algorithms can't parse the sort of metaphysical shit we lesbians get truly hot and bothered over. We made it through, and this show is almost short! Please ignore that Jules convinced me to cut a nearly 3,000-word story. I'm definitely going to do as its own video, if only to justify the amount of time I've spent playing Fire Red in the past 2 weeks, and then the time I spent writing that story. First up, here's this week's schedule. I'll just leave it up on screen while I do my outro, okay? The problem being I might have nothing to say for that outro. My last attempt turned into that rapid fire. None of these are big enough to be a full story thing. I just finished. So what do I fill this time with? Oh, I brought back the business dyke vibe from the first and I guess the fourth episode. I forgot about that too. It's been a minute since I did that, eh? Honestly, I think I should do it more, but I want to do more silly outfits too, but like trying to read my script in the cow onesie, I was melting. And the Umbreon half hoodie thing, well, okay, that was mostly just that I had some near misses of, let's say, slippage. But since I'm not recording these live on Twitch anymore, that probably isn't as much of an issue, is it? Oh, this is how YouTubers end up with prop closets. I get it now. Oh, but I am recording this on Sunday the 15th, so we just saw the new Digimon BNR update. And that new secret rare burst mode, so I can mention those too. The BNR... Okay, look, I know I'm out of the loop, but are the EX5 Dark Animal engine and fucking BT3 Malomyotismon really the current problem? There was only one purple deck even in the top 16 of the NA Nats, and I couldn't actually find any more recent coverage on short notice. Where the hell did all of the Digimon coverage go, y'all? I've been gone for like a year and a bit. What? And if I was a cynical mutt rather than the beacon of sunshine and lesbian rainbows that I am, I'd say it's pretty mercenary to unrestrict some of the best utility support Shine and Mirage have ever had before the new starter decks and BT25 both focus on Data Squad decks coming out in May. And especially with that burst mode, y'all, I really don't think we needed those unburnings. 5 keyword abilities? What? Why 5? Huh? And then all your Marcusi are 2K Digimon with Rush? Hells, doing that to one of them was usually all I needed for lethal on OG burst mode. This reads like an I win button, and that's before you can also choose to do 6 memory for minus 15k, play a Marcus, get the evolution, which will then repeat the minus 15k and play another tamer? How? How is that Look, I might be a dyed-in-the-wool shine gray girly pup, but even I think this might be a bit too pushed, y'all. Anyway, thank you. Thank you all. Everything I do, written, video, or streamed, is all brought to you by viewers, readers, and listeners like you over on patreon.com/fen, coffee.com/fen, for as little as $1 a month. So please consider supporting. You can find those in the links down below, as well as links to YouTube, Twitch, Blue Sky, my Discord server, all the things that you can find me through at my website. And an extra special thank you to April, Fragile Paper, Manfred, Pinball Witch, Pimento, Rose, Writer Princess, and Yalk. I quite literally could not do this without all of your support, and I'm pretty sure I need to add some names to that one because it's now March. They'll appear here because I don't have them in front of me at this very moment because that was a bad plan. Bye!